Did you ever ruin something trying to make it better? This question has been censored by the FIA. Welcome to Tinfoil Helmets, your occasional spicy hot take roundup of the latest F1 rumours, all with almost believable conspiracy theories to back them up. Everything here is carefully researched for hours to make sure it is totally founded in logic, reason, and truth. Or not. Who knows? Shall we see what we got right from the last week's predictions?
We were bold in our predictions, and that got us nowhere.
We did not manifest an exciting, dynamic set of circumstances through our skills as the manifesting of things that we say that we're not saying.
No, but I think in a way of trying to meddle with it, we made it worse.
I can see that. I can see that.
If that would be the theme of today's episode.
We made it worse. That applies for so many people this weekend.
So we had Oscar wins. No, but he did have a pretty good drive.
He did have a good drive.
Lando comes second. No, he was seconds away from second. Max on the podium. Yeah. Or no, we had Max not on the podium, which he finished on the podium. He's hustling that Red Bull car, man. Lewis finished out of the points. No, despite Mercedes' best efforts. Lewis P1 in the race. No, despite Mercedes' best efforts. Lance Stroll DNF.
Despite Lance Stroll's best efforts.
I mean, he was closer to finishing last. A DNF might have actually been an improvement on his race result than anything else.
This leads to the great question, though, since we had a number of high predictions, and I think we are 0 for 6.
Yes.
Are we out of the Major League Baseball yet?
No, we're fine. I mean, everybody has slumps.
Okay. So we need to come roaring back for Austin.
Yeah, which we'll see.
We got 4 weeks between this and the next race, so I have plenty of time to seek out many opportunities for causing the universe to change, some curses, maybe some spells, possibly some trades I can make with the devil, and see what happens.
How do we have a break longer than the summer break in the middle of the longest F1 season ever?
I don't know, and it's very strange.
Who put this calendar together? Instead, we're going to be racing into December when we had a 4-week break we could have done something with.
I still hold out there are too many races in this season, and it goes on for too long.
Or also we have all those triple headers as well that we could space those out a little bit as well.
I know. I don't understand what it is, and they claim they tried to make it, and I think they have successfully tried to get to this. Well, not only have they successfully tried, I think they did a good job getting towards it, which is more regionalized races, so they're not going back and forth all over the planet destroying it.
Yes, because Singapore has been sandwiched between Australia and Japan, where it belongs, and China.
Yeah, well, at least
very, very regional right now.
At least it's following the way around the planet, so back they can stop off halfway and take a rest.
Okay.
Except with 4 weeks, they're just going to go home. So
yeah, for sure. Take a break.
Yeah, take a break. Have a Kit Kat. Sponsored by Kit Kat.
Oh yeah, we know this because we know Valtteri has the ability to go race gravel worlds because of this.
That's what it's about. That's what it's about. Did you see Tiffany Cromwell? She won a race at the weekend.
Good for Tiffany. Which one?
I can't remember. It was the gravel. Might have been the gravel something. It was a gravel something. It was an official UCI doohickey thingy.
Whoa.
What does UCI stand for? Uniano Cicale Internazionale?
Yeah, pretty much. But French, not Italian. That seemed a little Italian there, and it's French.
Yeah, same difference. Not that the Italians would agree with me. Between race drama, did anything happen in this very short week?
Well, because we recorded on Monday and they flew to the Far East, and so we're very close to the international dateline, no, nothing really happened this week. The biggest news that mostly came out of the press conference and around there, which technically is between races, because if we go from the drama has to exist between green flag or checkered flag to green flag.
Correct.
You know, there was some between race drama. First off, the McLaren wing at Baku that Twitter was for sure telling me was legal and was not going to get banned at all was found to be illegal. And hey, don't do that going forward.
Was it deemed illegal, or was it deemed that it needed to change? And I know there's a subtle difference there, but if it was illegal, surely they shouldn't have been allowed to race with it. And did they race with it this weekend?
They didn't race with it this weekend because they ran their high downforce setup instead of the low downforce setup, and that was a feature of the low downforce setup car. Because, you know, you actually want downforce around Singapore and not your DRS flap opening whenever you want through the corners.
Why did they make 4 DRS zones? Because that's basically opening everywhere.
I have a thought on that later. It's, yeah. So it's they closed the loophole that they think allowed it, or that McLaren was using to fix it or to use it. So yeah, that might slow them down a little towards the back half of the season. Mexico could have been one of those that it really could have mattered, or Bahrain is drawn from memory,
or Las Vegas.
Oh yeah, or Vegas. I keep forgetting about Vegas
with the Moomin.
That's why are we racing in Vegas? Anyway, we're not there yet.
It was a good race last year, Andrew. It was worth it. Despite the drain hole incident and the poor fans who got screwed, it was actually a pretty good race.
Hey, I would have loosened every drain hole cover around Singapore if it meant we would have got a damn safety car, but that's another story for a different day.
We will hold that for our moment where we will discuss such important and dynamic issues. But yeah, Flexi Wing was Flexi. Everybody said it's wrong, and apparently it's not retroactively illegal, but you can't do it anymore. So McLaren wasted some money.
Well, I mean, that does make sense on the it's not retroactively illegal sort of thing. Like, they do that all the time with the Mercedes DAS system, whatever it was. Where, that was one of those, yeah, you can do it this year, but you're not doing it again. Like, you get it for a year and that's it.
Man, they didn't need it this year. Just keeps eating its tires anyway.
Hey. And then I think going into the press conference, our dear FIA leader, Mohammed Ben Suleiman, is that his name?
I think so.
Yeah. He seemed to take issue with some of the language during the Baku Grand Prix, and I believe made a comment along the lines of, "We're not rappers," or something like that. Correct.
Adding a little bit of racism into his judgment, as he always likes to do.
Yes, because as we all know, rappers are the only people who swear.
No, rock stars have never done it, nor have pop stars, nor have country stars, nor have even blues stars.
It's a bit of an aside, but we actually don't have much to talk about today. So we're just going to go down this aside path anyway. So have you seen the movie Good Will Hunting, or are we adding this to list of movies that Dominic needs to watch?
I have seen Good Will Hunting, and I enjoyed Good Will Hunting.
Great movie. The only reason Good Will Hunting is rated R is because the amount of F-bombs that are in that movie. And Miramax, who produced the movie, came to Ben Affleck and Matt Damon and said, who both grew up in Boston, or in the Boston area, and said, "Hey, the only reason this movie is rated R is because of language. We're wondering, would it be possible to tone it down a little bit, and so that we could release it as a PG-13, get a little wider audience, things like that." And Ben Affleck and Matt Damon were like, sure, absolutely. How many are we over? Because in a PG-13 movie you get one.
Yeah.
And Miramax was like, and they're thinking maybe they're 5 or 6 over. We'll find a way to trim these out. It's 257, and they're like, oh man, no, I don't think we can trim that many out, and I don't think that's the real number, but just they were over by 200 something.
And the thing is, this is going to sound so maybe not so strange. I think if you removed the F word from that movie, it would not have been the movie that it was. And it's not that it made the movie, but it helped you feel that they were real people.
Yeah, and that was the thing. They wrote it as we are 2 guys from Boston, and we know these people, and this is how people from this area of Boston talk, and they were being true to themselves and true to the movie, and yeah, hilarious.
Yeah. So he was very upset, was he? And did he instigate some new policies, maybe?
I didn't see any new policies. Were there?
Well, he's decreed it. It might as well be a new policy. But then, Max went into the interview and was asked about this topic because he was one of the offenders. And then he promptly repeated exactly what he'd said in the previous race about his car, which was what did he call it? Piece of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, Niki Lauda can say it in the Rush movie, but Max can't say it in a press conference.
Whatever. And so Max is going to have to don an orange suit, and not because he's Dutch, but because he has committed a heinous crime of swearing and using the F word in an inappropriate location, so much so that he received a reprimand and community service. The greatest thing any driver can ever fear is community service.
Yeah, are we going to talk about Max's post-qualifying interview after qualifying, or do you want to talk about it now?
We should talk about it now, but I want to provide one more follow-up clarifying comment, because Lewis was asked at a later point about it. Lewis had also previously raised the point that rappers is slightly racist because, people swear everywhere, and that has a racist turn to it. But then Lewis says, I think Max is within his rights to have done that, and it's silly to have given him community service. I wouldn't do it, and I hope Max doesn't do it either. And I just love the fact that Max and Lewis can bond over idiotic rules and enforcement.
I think Max and Lewis are more friends than Sky Sports wants them to be.
I agree, and I think over time, I think Max has realised what it means, what the challenges that Lewis has been through as a multiple world champion, and all the weird way that people start to hate you just because you're winning.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what we're not seeing with Lando right now. Very much reminds me of like Max from like 2019 and 2020,
but without the skill.
Yeah, exactly. But in his mannerisms and how he does things, of like he feels like he is the crowned champion or the soon to be crowned champion, and is not always being sensible about things. And now Max is like, well, I've won a couple championships. Who cares?
It is amazing the freedom that success brings.
Yeah, and that's true across the board.
Indeed.
But then after qualifying, when Max was in the press conference room, the guy who asked questions at the press conference, not the reporter.
Somebody or other.
Yeah, he kind of kicks off with the generic question sort of stuff. And he made a comment, and Max was just giving him nothing but one-word answers. It's like, so have you fixed, what did you fix in the car overnight? A lot. Are you feeling better about the race? Kind of. Like, it was
beautiful.
It's worth, I think the interview was up on like Formula Dank or something like that, or it was on one of the subreddits. I think it was the joke subreddit.
It was when somebody from the press asked the question of, would you be willing to talk to us outside the room? And Max did not hesitate for one moment, and he was like, yes, and went outside. And when everything finished, they went to do it. But the fact that he reacted so quickly and absolutely was willing to confirm that he would be willing to talk with them, I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best route going forward, I think, for Max, because it was like, hey, he can't get in trouble with the FIA if he's just giving one-word answers, because he's answering the questions. And then the reporters probably get better answers to their questions outside in the paddock rather than in the press conference room. So, yeah, great time all around.
Did you hear what the FIA did when he went to have the meeting outside?
What'd they do?
They said, you can't have the meeting here. You need to get down to the media pen quickly. Max, you can't have a conversation here. To which Max immediately responded, that's okay. We'll do it while we walk. And then continue to ask people's questions. I can't work out. I would love to know whether this was a strategy that he formulated with the media team at Red Bull. Good job, whoever that person is. They should deserve a raise. Or whether he thought about this himself and decided to just roll with it. I thought it was beautiful.
This seems very much like Max being Max rather than anything else.
I agree. But it was great. But it was a thread that continued through the weekend, including into the cool-down room, where people used metaphors and expletives in an attempt to circumvent it. And Max apparently, again, was giving longer but still short answers in the post-race interview, which he then said he'd go and do the interview outside, and then he went and did it. So...
I mean, you put an Australian in the cool-down room, like, you got to remember, the Australian language doesn't believe there are swear words.
Indeed, there aren't. Some people restrict themselves, other people allow themselves to use the full flower of the English language.
And Australians certainly do something. I'm not quite sure I'd call it a full flower, but they do something.
It's amazing. They've got all the language and they come up with all the cool words. It's fantastic.
I do love the Australians' use of English. They leave no stone unturned with their use of the English language.
They do not. It's amazing. Should we move on to the next point?
Yes. During the free practice sessions, the F1 graphics producers were nothing but savage. They had a chyron up for Max Verstappen that he is winless in the last 7 Grand Prix. Also,
brutal.
There was a fact on the broadcast that is equally as brutal of the gap between Max and Lando is pretty much the same as it was at Imola as it is at Singapore.
Oof.
That we've gone from May to September and the gap really hasn't changed. And you think about how quick that McLaren car has looked and how terrible that Red Bull car has looked in the last, since Imola. And to think that the gap really hasn't changed, that's like how much has McLaren thrown away this championship.
It is a tale of a driver who is underdriving the car and a tale of a driver who is overdriving the car.
Well, you don't want to overdrive the car because then you can also just possibly go into a barrier and turn 14, but I get you.
You know what I mean.
The chyron for Lando Norris has started a Grand Prix from pole 5 times and lost the lead on the first lap every time. Which
brutal.
True. Hey, at least he kept today, but...
He did. He did.
But that is brutal. And then I think the most brutal of them was that Franco Colapinto has scored more points in 2 races at Williams than Sargent did in 36 race starts for Williams.
Did he score more than Nicholas Latifi too? I think he did.
Let's look.
Did he? Oh, I don't think he has, but did he score more than George?
George, I think, scored like 1 point. Oh no, did he get the race win?
He got the second in Spa for the non-race, which I think means it's not possible. But it is possible that Franco Colapinto could outscore George Russell in a Williams in his first season, and George had 3 seasons to do it.
You want to know what's even worse? Because Colapinto has 4 points off of 1 race result, and that's more than Logan had in 36 races. That's terrible.
Ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I love this person, and I think they need to do more. I need them to come back and do more, because it was great.
Nicholas Latifi has 9 career points.
Oof.
So, but hey, plenty of calendar time left for Franco to get it done.
Got, 6 more races?
And 3 sprints.
3? Oh, yeah, sprints. Oh, no, we haven't got a sprint next time, have we?
We do. We have a sprint in Austin.
Anyway, shall we move on to see whether people have jobs? Because it's kind of nicely overlapping with the between race drama.
Let's go for it.
There is a strong rumor that Daniel Ricciardo is about to lose his seat in F1 and be replaced with Liam Lawson mid-season. Red Bull V-Carb.
Before Austin, too. His second home race.
Indeed. I bet you he's still going to be there for media duties, though. That'll be brutal. Yes, the rumour is he's going to be switched out. V-Carb not wanting to be outdone by Williams, swapping out the team halfway through. And they're going to do it with Danny Rick. And I feel bad for Danny Rick, but I think it's totally reasonable.
I don't understand this one.
I'd like to hear your theories on this one.
I get as much as I don't want to see Daniel Ricciardo leave the grid, because I think he's a fabulous personality, and at one point in time he was an amazing race car driver, and I don't know what has happened to him since then.
I have thoughts on that.
We can get into that. But I understand replacing Logan because he's binning the car every other second and costing the team a bunch of money. I understand Sergio being on the chopping block because he's nowhere near Max, also binning it, costing the team a lot of money. And Daniel's just there. He's had some good races this season, like Miami. So he's had good races, and the races that he's been bad in, some of it's just you're rolling the dice on strategy in a season that hasn't had any safety cars, because you're down in the back half of the grid. I know Yuki's out qualified him, but it's not a straight sweep. So it's one of these situations of, I understand replacing him at the end of the season. I don't understand doing it mid-season. Because, what do you think another driver is going to be able to do that Daniel won't?
They want to give Liam more races to see if he or Yuki can take Perez's seat next year, and they want to run the trial now. And you can't do off-season testing to work that out, and so this is their choice.
Fair enough, but it's still just man, I get, yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
I think the thing that they should have done in this situation is they should have got rid of Perez, put Danny in for the rest of the season as a thank you / he'll probably be fine in it, and then had Liam in the second seat at V-Carb, and then a bake-off between the two. But because the Mexican Mafia has got involved and said that they will destroy the event, we're stuck with Perez until at least after Mexico.
Yeah. But do you want to talk about what you think happened with Danny Rick?
I've been rewatching my races, as I have alluded to previously, and seeing him in the Toro Rosso, which I understand is not necessarily a great car. He didn't do great in that. And I think this is Adrian Newey's fault. I think Adrian Newey built some pretty good cars, and they flattered Daniel Ricciardo's performance.
My only question to that is, he beat Seb in 2014.
Yes, Seb was in a mood. He couldn't drive the car.
Fair enough. So you think Danny Rick was always overflated?
Yes.
Interesting. That would be sad.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's less that he was overrated. I think he was flattered by that car.
Yeah, I could see that. But even then, he had, I think 2018 was the first year Max beat him. So it took a season of Max in the car to overtake Daniel.
But Max is amazing, so I think that's more a comment not on Danny, that's a comment on Max. But it feels like it's having watched all these seasons in quick succession and seeing people's performance when they come in, and you see there's bright sparks and you see there's low sparks and all the other things. Danny didn't come in and light it up. He wasn't beating his teammate all the time. He was being beaten by his teammate all. And so I feel like there's something in there that's not that he was overrated. I wouldn't go that far, but he was flattered by the car.
Yeah, I mean, I could very well see that he is one of those drivers that, you know, if he jives with the car really well, he can be fast. But, you know, he's not going to be like a Lewis who can extract everything out of a car, no matter what kind of car he's given. I think if Daniel jives well with the car, you get an amazing Daniel Ricciardo. I think if he doesn't jive with the car, then you get back of the pack Daniel Ricciardo.
Yep, I agree. The single greatest question I continue to have about this shuffle is why there's so many cloak and daggers.
I think this goes back to the power struggle that is within Red Bull right now. Not Red Bull Racing, Red Bull the drinks company.
And how so? Who's putting it on the quiet and who's making the change?
It's one of those that, you know, there's just we believe there to be some sort of power struggle in there after Dietrich has died, and you know because there was a whole thing if he solely owned the company. And then when he died, like 51% or something like that is owned by the ties, and 49% is owned by like his son or something like that now, or the Austrian conglomerate. So it's just one of those of, you know, who's really in control, who's got the purse strings going forward, who makes the decisions, and you know you see that out. It's not just Red Bull Racing. It's, you know, you see this in every normal day companies when there's a power struggle.
Yeah.
Look at the Bobs at Disney.
Did you read the New York Times article about it?
No.
Oh, it was brutal. It's amazing. I haven't finished yet, but it is brutal. That's a different topic though. There's a lot of Schadenfreude in there.
Sure, but you know what I say. It's like it's not just Red Bull. I think there's a lot of like, you know, we've seen possibly like Helmut might be on his way out at some point in time. And, you know, Helmut doesn't want to ruffle any feathers. They seem beholden now more to Red Bull Racing themselves seems beholden more to outside investors, such as the Mexican Mafia or whoever is over there, than they were necessarily in the past. So I think it's something we've seen of when you don't have Dietrich just writing you a blank check and keeping everybody else behind the scenes out of control. Now you have to be a little bit more careful.
Feels weird just that I haven't just why they haven't dropped the message before the weekend, because like clearly I think Ricciardo knows, so I don't understand why they didn't just roll it out. But maybe there's some more machinations behind the scene in terms of it's not a done deal and maybe he will survive.
Yeah.
I will survive.
We need the Australian mafia to be all up in arms and take care of it. But it could also be a sense of you know, whatever happens to Daniel affects Checo, and if it gets out before the Mexican Grand Prix, then everything that they were worried about the Mexican Grand Prix happens at the Mexican Grand Prix. True.
Should we move on to the one other driver move that is rumoured that we have some details on?
Let's do it.
Apparently Bottas might have got a 1 year reprieve and be signed in. Apparently the F2 people, Gabriella Bortoletto, and there was somebody else whose name now I've forgotten, who was apparently also in the running, has not done. Those negotiations have come to nothing, and so Bottas gets 1 more year. I think this will be, if he does get a 1 year review, it will be his last one, unless he knocks it out of the park because the car is so much better. He was in an interview yesterday or this week, and he said he thinks he's driving better than he was in the Mercedes. Like, not his performance on track, but his ability to extract it from the car, and I think that's quite an interesting take. I hope he stays in it for 1 more year. I would love him to do it and then be amazing and outperform the Hulk, despite the fact I'd like the Hulk to get a podium at some point.
No, the Hulk doesn't deserve a podium. There was some driver rumors moving around that we could have quite the silly season in 2025.
I love it. If Max pulls the pin and causes the great shuffle of doom, it's going to be amazing.
Right. So there's talk about Max going to Aston Martin to reunite with Adrian Newey. Christian Horner made a comment that, you know, they know George Russell's deal is up in 2026 and they would be foolish to look past that or to not look past that. So, like, are we but I know we also know that Toto's been big on Max and wanting Max in the car. So the question is, do we get a two-way driver swap between Mercedes and Red Bull, Or do we go for a three-way driver stop and a to-be-named Aston Martin driver to the Mercedes? Probably maybe for
Lance Stroll,
Lance or Fernando, George to Red Bull, and Max to Aston.
but also Carlos Sainz has performance clauses in his car, in his contract, that if he gets a better ride somewhere else at a much faster car, he can leave Williams even after 1 year, despite the fact it's a multi-year contract. So I think Carlos could be in the mix there.
Yeah. So the one thing that I wish Formula One had that other sports have is I wish there were like driver trades.
I see. Where you as the driver don't really get a lot of say in it, and there's a bunch of other stuff that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could see that.
Could you imagine if you were allowed to trade like drivers and personnel?
If you were sitting on the grid right now, and you could trade, what would be like your top trade?
Well, the weird thing about how that could affect the World Championship, like essentially like trade Max and George like right now or something like that. Like that would be crazy. Before if we were go back to like the very start of the season, it would have been very interesting to see if I was trying to figure out a way to trade Newey for Lance Stroll.
Okay, this is going to sound absolutely messed up. If you could trade them around and there was basically no restrictions on what the driver had to say about it, and they could just trade them, would you trade at the beginning of the season, right? If you were if you were Mercedes, would you trade Lewis Hamilton for Alex Albon?
Yeah, because I think they are pissed enough at him that they might do it.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
It's things like that where I'm like, actually, like the whole bird in hand, two in the bush, we've seen your stats, blah, 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 etc., etc. There's something there. I think there could be some really interesting trades.
But I think there's a way here of like, because we know with the Formula One rules, like that there are a certain amount of people who are like exempt from the cost cap for like their cost, and it's like the drivers and like your three highest paid like people or something like that. If all 5 of those people were eligible to be traded between teams, like that would be amazing.
They should do that at the winter breaks. That's when it should be effective. And there's an aspect, like just like they recalculate your aero time and halfway through the season. That's the same opportunity, and it's that those 2 periods, and then crazy things can happen.
Well, I think you would need a trade deadline similar to what all
major
sports do.
But it happens at, on the Monday immediately following the last race of that section. That's when they have to be enacted. They have to be announced that day. You can't like wait 3 weeks, and like they have to be on that Monday. That is the one time that it's open. And that, because that gives you the only people who would then be exempt from the shutdown would be those people who were involved, who could come in and like learn things.
Actually, we should sweeten the deal a little bit more of like you can trade like dollars on your cost cap as well.
Oh, brutal.
Yeah.
Oh.
Wouldn't that be great though?
It should be very interesting. But here's the thing that I think that's true about F1. It would find a way to exploit that in the weirdest ways to create a great advantage. And like, it wouldn't be fun. It would be like ridiculous.
Yeah, but it would be ridiculous to a point. Because like, what if you like traded for who you thought was the best drivers, screwed your cost cap over, and then couldn't develop your car? Like, come on, it'd be great. And then what if you're like Red Bull and you like, oh, well, Checo's been binning it. We'll trade Checo to like Haas because we know Haas isn't going to use all their budget cap for like some of their cap space. And then suddenly now we can fix the car. Like, come on, this would be a fantastic. So you put K-Mag next to Max for an exchange for like $15 million in the cost cap. It would be so great.
It would be really fascinating to see how that would actually net out. Now I'm just thinking about people who work for $1, but they are individually and uniquely sponsored by the sponsors and paid for sponsorship time, independent of the team itself. Like, I feel like that would lead to something completely messed up.
Fair enough.
Shall we talk about qualifying?
Yeah, we should actually talk about something that happened at this supposedly a racetrack.
Yes. It's a part-time racetrack, and it's providing part-time performance and excitement. Number 1, you have that Ferrari had a no good, very bad day.
In qualifying, absolutely. They pulled a Ferrari. I mean, when you have both cars give no time in Q3, that's a very bad day.
But they had one because the track got deleted, and one because one binned it while starting their lap, which is pretty rare. And so they did have a bad day, but I felt they were in for a good performance if they hadn't managed to screw it up.
Yeah, it's really sad they did screw it up. A friend before qualifying, I messaged in a group chat with some friends of Ferrari gonna Ferrari, and one of my friends was like, "No, that's a spoiler. You can't tell me that. That was a spoiler." And it's like, yes, but there are so many different ways Ferrari can Ferrari. It's not a spoiler. Like Ferrari gonna Ferrari could be a front row lockout. I mean, I guess only at Monza would that be Ferrarying, but like it could be. It could be they take each other out coming out of their garage in the pit lane and they both can't start at Q1. Like, it can be anything because Ferrari gonna Ferrari.
They could put extreme wets on the car when there's no clouds in the sky just because they think it could do.
Didn't they do that once?
They kind of did it at Silverstone to Leclerc, but such is life. Yeah, Ferrari didn't have a good qualifying and that kind of sucked. Max is still Max?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they're starting to make inroads on making that car better again, but also just when you have a technical course, Max can chuck it down and put out a good time, and he was really close to pole.
Yep, Max is not yet washed.
That was definitely his best qualifying session in the last couple races for sure.
Oh yeah, without question, it was great. Lewis pulled out the bag. I thought this was actually pretty interesting. That he managed to stick it on third with George like pretty close behind him. But I think this is actually because Mercedes forgot which driver was which, and they gave George Lewis's tires by accident. Hence why George is on the blower, immediately complaining about his tires.
Well, at least the Lewis's tire blankets.
Yes, maybe.
There was some drama going on about like George and Pirelli. Have you seen this?
Yeah, this is the whole comment that's been going on for a few races now, that Mercedes have a really hard time keeping the tires in the tire temperature window. I think this is what Lewis has been complaining about and saying that the team's just screwing it up. And I think George has taken the different perspective that it's the tires' fault versus blaming it on the team. And he was saying that the tires can't. They have such a narrow window that it's extremely difficult to extract performance from those tires. And you could hear a little bit of this because in qualifying, Lewis had a problem where they were like, no, you need to drive it differently because your surface temperatures are too high. And I think George got a similar message. And it's like, okay, thanks for telling me I'm doing a good job, but now I'm driving a tractor. And I think it's all related to the same mess. But again, I think it's just because they gave George the wrong tires. Tire blankets.
Oh, that was one thing that kind of happened between the week we didn't talk about was Lance Stroll's radio message from Baku coming out towards his engineer.
Oh, yeah. He was being a total nozzle.
Yeah, which is one thing I wanted to ask about. And does Lance still have a job? Of what will it take to get him out of that Aston Martin seat?
I don't think there's anything that can get him out of that seat. The closest thing is getting back. Closest, and I'm not sure they won't fire Fernando.
Yeah, but you look at like today's race, and we can. I think we've mostly covered things in qualifying, but like you look at today's race and you look at like where Fernando was able to put that car and you look at where Lance was able to put that car, and it's not even there's like one or two car, like for the most part, there were a couple drivers out of position, but mostly it was, you were within one or two places of your teammate, and he was half the field away from his teammate.
It was ridiculous. And he looked. There was a post qualifying interview or a post free practice interview. He looked like he had come off the largest cocaine fueled bender I have ever seen. Massive bags under his eyes, looking tired and not jaundiced, but like And I know that it's Singapore and that happens to a lot of drivers, but he looked particularly out of it. And I think he's feeling extremely. He might be feeling a lot of pressure. Not that he shouldn't feel a lot of pressure, and that maybe is causing some of these outbursts of being terrible to his engineer, which is not allowed.
But I think it's something we touched on at the start of last season of how much can you let Lance drag your team down? And you've gone out and you're paying Adrian Newey $30 million a year.
And part of the company.
More than most teams spend on their drivers combined. And at some point in time, you're going to have to look at Lance and say, you're not it.
I can't get past a parent's love for their child.
It's not personal, it's business.
I know, and as much as I think that's appropriate for Lawrence Stroll, I'm also not convinced that everybody's quite that bad.
But like here's the thing. It's like if Lance stops driving an F1, Lance can still go drive like the Aston Martin car in WEC. He is not going to be like out of being a race car driver. He's just going to be out of being a Formula One race car driver.
But that's the That's the trophy he wants on the family wall. It's the only way he will receive his father's love is by achieving a world championship.
Now, I think Adrian Newey is a great car designer, but I don't think Adrian Newey can design a car so good with the 2026 regulations, which it is totally an aero formula, which is good for Newey, that he can make it such that Lance can win and whoever Lance's teammate cannot win.
The thing that's unclear about Aston Martin and Max Verstappen is how far will Max go to get the seat in a car, and will he be willing to accept a rule or a line item that says if he is within X or Y distance of Max, that Max at that point will have to live. Will Max be so arrogant to not provide, to allow that clause in his contract, thinking that he'll be okay, and then the car will be so good that he will be close enough within it? I don't know what would happen. I don't think Max would do that. I don't think Joss would do that. I think Joss would say, I'd rather take Lance and beat him on the side of an Italian petrol station than he would to accept that clause in the contract.
I think there's a real question there of at some point in time what becomes more valuable to Lance Stroll, or Lawrence Stroll. His son possibly winning a World Drivers' Championship, or definitely Aston Martin winning a Constructors' Championship?
I think between Adrian Newey taking a percentage of the team, Aston Martin having recently sold a chunk of the team to somebody somewhere, that this is going to end up in a situation where actually Lawrence Stroll doesn't have a controlling interest, and that's what's going to happen.
And he's doing this by design.
Yes.
I think that's the key thing, that we're a little bit of takes and rumors section, but if you want to get Lance out, this is how you do it. Because maybe he's already realized that Lance isn't going to have it, and we need to replace this driver. However, I can't fire my own son. However, if we start to have other owners and investors who we say have a say, suddenly Adrian's the bad guy because he's not fast enough. This is how you do it. This is how you get rid of Lance in that seat.
Yep. That's exactly what's going to happen. And you'll be like, sorry, it's out of my hands.
Should we actually talk about the race?
We should talk about the race. I will note that at the beginning of this race, the Formula One graphics, which we've discussed earlier, said that this is the first ever night race in F1 and it was in 2018. I think they're just washing away the stench of 2008, which I still think should hang over Fernando Alonso more so than it does.
Yeah, I definitely agree. He got lucky on that one, and I have no idea how he got lucky on that one.
Teflon.
Yeah, really. I mean, to be fair, I do love that this is a night race. I do think it's great. But man, this race was so dull.
We should save this for takes and rumors.
Great, because we're going to need 5 minutes of me just ranting into a microphone.
Exactly. I want to give you the space to allow all of it to come out. So
Merck split their strategy, which I don't understand coming from third and fourth on the grid.
I want to know, did Lewis screw this up? Or did Mercedes screw this up?
Can I vote for option 3 if they needed a way to get George ahead of Lewis, and this seemed like the best way possible?
Oh, the sabotage is back. I can see that. I can agree with that. And then they sold Lewis up the Swanee by giving him a bunch of data that said you can do this, and then decided to screw Lewis. I could believe that. 100%. Right,
and if not, if you're going to split your strategy, why go soft medium instead of hard medium? And put George the Tire Whisperer on the hard. No, he and Lewis won't be really battling with each other in the first couple laps because he's on the hard. And then.
And this is why this ended up this way, because I think this is how Lewis always ends up in front of George, is they give Lewis the go long, the opportunistic tyre strategy because they know he'll be able to pull it off versus George, and instead they did it the other way around this time because they realised the mistake. They wanted to give George a boost. They needed George to feel better after all the rumours this week that he was going to get fired for Max Verstappen.
And then there's the other possibility of maybe they were hoping for a safety car, but then why go for softs? It's weird.
I don't really know what's going on. But on the flip side, Merck have gotten pretty good at their pit stops. They were the third fastest pit stop this weekend, and they were the third fastest pit stop last weekend. The fastest pit stop this weekend was 2.11 by McLaren. I can't remember who was in number 2 at 2.14. I think it was Red Bull. And Mercedes at 2.17 the third fastest pit stop. The question here is, did everybody else get worse, or did Mercedes get better?
I think Mercedes has actually gotten better because Red Bull's definitely gotten worse because, as they've been in this title fight, Max has had a lot of like 2.8s and 3.0 stops. Like even today was like a 3.0. And because it was a 3.0, he was behind Charles Leclerc. It doesn't even need to be like, a 2.4. Like a 2.5 would have gotten him in front of Charles for, which, didn't make a difference in the race. But it made a difference. It was not great.
Yeah, it wasn't great. I think Perez got the better pit stop too.
Yeah, he did.
Not that it did him any good.
No, he was complaining about being behind Franco a lot.
Did you hear Lewis last weekend saying how Franco was really good?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think... to take a side tangent, because we've got all the time in the world, Martin on the commentating was like, Franco Colapinto was not on my radar, but he's been proven to show, like he's showing he's really good. And I think this leads to the epiphany that the F3, F2 feeder series are pointless. They don't actually tell you anything about how good a driver will be in F1.
I would definitely subscribe to that. I think that makes sense.
And I think that is an opportunity for them to mix this up, because I think it's...
Yeah, but I think the real question is, like, Franco's definitely proven he is worthy of a drive, but where does he go at this point?
Indeed, I don't see any seat for him.
Yeah, same.
Except maybe in 2026 on Audi when they replace Bottas.
Yeah. I did see Kimi Antonelli hanging out in the background of the Mercedes garage.
Yeah, he does that all the time. Apparently they were showing pictures of Ollie Behrman and Cantonelli side by side, trying to like set them up for a title fight next year.
He looks so young compared to everybody else in that garage. Like I know he's pretty young already, but he looks like, especially next to like Toto and Peter Bonington, he just looks like it's like bring your kid to work day.
It is a little bit like that. Last item in the race, Danny was trying to save his seat by knowing that he had to screw Lando with one last hurrah to prove a point about his deep-rooted hate for Lando.
I don't think he was trying to save his seat. I think this is just if you watched Game of Thrones, tell Cersei I wanted to know it was me sort of thing.
Yeah.
This is one of those, I can help out my buddy and screw over the team that screwed me over in one swift go.
Apparently Max was one of a few drivers, or one of very few drivers, I think is the way he said it, to text Danny after, I think it was Japan, and say it's something nice to him.
Yeah, I truly believe that, like, Danny, Rick, and Max might be like the two closest friends on the grid. Mm-hmm. Like, even ever since Danny Rick has left Red Bull, like, we know that he and Max have like still been in a lot of contact and like, even sending messages to each other like that, like, I really think they do somewhat care about each other, like, and in a way that like maybe the other drivers don't. So it's still nice to see. And it was definitely one of those of, like even in post race, on the cool down lap, Danny got the point and Max was like, thanks, Danny. Like, and I think in the media pin afterwards, he said, if the championship is decided by 1 point, I'm going to get a really good Christmas gift this year.
Yeah. Yeah, it should be noted that Lando, Max, and Danny shared a plane, Max's plane, to Singapore. So they can't hate each other.
Yeah, but we know who the odd one out was there.
Lando.
Yeah, 100%. And was there anything more we want to talk about the race? Ferrari did fine.
Ferrari. Yeah. There was a lot of people stuck behind a lot of people who they shouldn't have been stuck behind today, and I'm not quite sure why that was. Because I think both Oscar and Lewis proved that you could overtake.
I'm not certain that's true.
As in they didn't prove that they could overtake despite overtaking like 8 people?
Yeah. Well, Lando didn't overtake anybody. Oscar overtook a couple people.
As I said, Oscar and Lewis.
Oh, Lewis. Did Lewis overtake anyone? Oh, Lewis eventually. Lewis overtook... Essentially, you overtook cars you should have overtook.
Yeah.
By like a lot. Like, yeah, oh, Lewis can go past a Haas. Oh, I'm so impressed. Like...
But nonetheless, there was a lot of other people... There was a Perez stuck behind a Colapinto, a Red Bull stuck behind a Williams, and a Ferrari stuck behind a Haas. They should have been able to overtake each other, and they didn't.
Yeah, are you really surprised that Perez was stuck behind a Williams, though?
No, but, like, really? He should have been able to get past a Williams. I'm not saying he should have got much farther, but, like, he's a brand new guy. Surely you should have scared him. Because you're Perez, you're going to crash into him.
Well, this is teeing well off into my rant, so we should just keep going anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, driver of the day for you is
For me, it was Oscar. He actually did some overtakes, which was great at Singapore, and he drove a really good race. And I think he is proving time and time again that if he can just figure out qualifying, because I think that's his biggest weakness right now. I think in a race he has better race pace from the front than Lando Norris does. So if he can just figure out how to qualify a little faster,
yep,
it's not looking great for Lando in 2025.
Yeah.
And then my honorable mention was Daniel Ricciardo for doing Max a solid.
No, he just did it for the bonus that was tied to it. He did it for the money.
No, I refuse to believe that.
Okay. What about the driver who couldn't wait for it to be over?
Well, this was just me personally of Lance Stroll, get the hell out of that car.
Yeah.
Put Franco in that car.
That would be that would be a brilliant stopgap for 2025 until you can get Max.
Yeah.
Brilliant. My driver of the day, speaking of people, is Franco Colapinto. He did a great dive down the inside at the start, which I think pissed off Albon, but it was a pretty good move. It didn't. I watched the replay and it looked actually pretty reasonable. Maybe it was a bit spicy, but it wasn't bad.
Alex did not like that.
He did not like that. The other one I'd say that maybe for driver of the day was the Hulk, because he just held everybody up. I think he did a great job. I think he's going to do well in that Sauber if they fix it for next year. And then my driver who couldn't wait for it to be over was K-Mag. He couldn't play his chaos role, and then he got a puncture and had to drive slowly, and
still retired.
Yeah, kind of sucked for that. He was quite retired so close to the end.
Boo.
Championship watch.
Yeah. So, despite Lando winning and Max coming second, the amount of points Max or Lando needs to take off Max in a week actually went up. So he essentially, because he only had a 7-point gap to Max and he needed 8.4 points in a weekend to close that down. He now needs 8.6 points a weekend to close everything down. I believe the stat that we are currently running with is if Lando wins everything, and I think takes all the fastest laps too, and Max
doesn't need any fastest laps for this to work out.
Oh,
sorry. I see what you're saying. No. Yeah. No, sorry. I'm stupid. You got it.
If Lando wins every race, gets every fastest lap, wins every sprint race, and Max comes second in every race and every sprint race, Max will still win the championship.
By 1 point.
Hey, that's enough to get Daniel Ricciardo a good Christmas gift. Do you think a good Christmas gift for Daniel Ricciardo would be a drive in the Red Bull?
He already drove the Red Bull last year. He drove it when it was good.
Fair enough.
What would the difference have been if Danny hadn't taken the single point away?
It would have been 8.5. I went to that if Lando either pitted to get new softs or go for the fastest lap, like it still would have not been enough. It would have been 8.5 instead of 8.6.
Okay, so it wouldn't have changed the dynamic.
It might have in Abu Dhabi, but for this race, no.
Spicy takes and rumors.
Sure, you can go first.
Yeah, I don't understand why when it's so hot in all of these races and the fact that they had to take the Mercedes drivers out of the media pen because they were overheated because of that hot seat that they keep doing. I don't understand why they don't put like some kind of fan in the helmet or electronic like no moving parts Peltier cooler in the helmet just to cool them off. Like it seems like 100 grams and you would have a safer driver at the end who'd be able to push harder and possibly win the race. I think it would offset the temperature change the weight gain on the car.
Yeah, there's obviously some sort of like dynamic things here of, I'm curious like how much you can't mess with a racing helmet because it has to be like certified for a crash or things like that. Like, could you wear an ice vest under your racing suit or something like that? Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. This feels to me like this is a fine line between like sporting and safety regulations.
Yes. I agree. It's right on the bubble.
What they need to do is the Dan Bigham ice slurry.
You're going to have to explain now.
Yes. Okay. So Dan Bigham, a former Mercedes AMG Formula One team engineer of all people, who, he worked in Formula One briefly, but he is more known as a cyclist and an aerodynamic. He's like the Adrian Newey kind of track cycling. Kind of. A little bit of a guru, kind of knows a lot about aerodynamics and things like that. So when he was taking on the world hour record, which is maybe the coolest record in all of sports because it's how far can you ride a bike for 1 hour. So it's because they're kind of like other more distance-based events is like, well, you go a little faster, it's over sooner, so you can suffer a little bit harder because it's over sooner. But no, this thing takes an hour, so you have to suffer for an hour no matter what. And one of the big things with this is cooling, because, you are generating a lot of heat in your body. And the position that these people are riding in isn't always the best for cooling. And having like a piece of skin suit or your clothing set up for cooling might not make it as fast as if it was set up for speed. So what he did before his hour record was he was literally like eating like an ice slushy. And it was essentially how much ice could he ingest to keep his core body temperature down before the hour record started.
What was the impact on the weight, though? Because surely each piece of weight, the weight slowed you down. But the implication here is that because he was cooler, he could stay at a higher rate for longer. So net, it was worth it. Weight
matters in the hour record, but not that much.
Okay.
Like cooling and power is worth so much more than weight. Like you're talking an extra kilo might be worth like 3 meters or something like that over the course of an hour. Like it's not a lot. Like even then the bike that Felipe Gana rode, who actually set the hour record, and kind of Bigham was a setup for Gana because he was working on the same team that Gana was at the same point in time. It's kind of like a race engineer. So he was kind of like a proving ground of like all the technology that they were going to use. They had a 3D printed titanium bike, which was anything but light. So like, it's just one of those things of like weight matters, but aerodynamics matter so much more and cooling matters so much more that like the gains you get, like if we were to say that like I don't know if this is true, but like every pound requires like 1 more watt to move forward. Like keeping your core body temperature down, like generates 2 more watts. Like it's kind of like that sort of thing. Like by being cooler, you get more power that even if it does add a little bit more weight, it's fine because it's gone. And also like you're sweating it out throughout the event and, it's going off into the ether. So you're losing weight as you go.
Does that also mean that those skin suits that they wear are designed in such a way to increase evaporation? To also reduce your weight, like it's heat dissipation and weight reduction?
No, it's more they're designed to be fast.
Okay.
A lot of the fast stuff is a little rubbery.
Yeah. Did you see David Coulthard and what he did to Lando Norris?
Yeah, he dumped some water on his head. That looked great.
Yeah, I'm not sure how Lando didn't look like he enjoyed it.
Oh, he gave him a big hug after that.
Oh, he did? Oh, okay, then it wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it is time for me to open up the floor to your strong feelings about this race, specifically the track. So, when I was a casual Formula One fan, before I started really watching Formula One. Before you started your media career. Sure. I always liked Singapore, just because like it was at night and that makes it cool. And, the track was very twisty and stuff. And, the cars were following each other through these twisty bits and stuff. And it looked really cool. It made it look really fast because they were all going through all these twisty bits. The night aspect made it really cool. It's one of those things, if we want to make Monaco better, let's run Monaco at night. Monaco at night would be fabulous. But over the last couple of years, and I think we've also talked about this a little on this podcast, of like, what does a schedule look like for a world driver champion? Like, what do you want your world driver champion to be? And I think the FIA and some other people have leaned into this whole thing that the way that makes a really good race is overtakes. Yeah. And I don't necessarily subscribe that overtakes are what make a race great. I agree with that. And in the last couple years, they have ruined Singapore. The first step was they got rid of the Singapore sling, which... That's temporary. It's temporary. It is temporary because there's construction happening in that point for like the next... From when it started, I think it was 3 years of construction. And so I believe it is coming back. Well, they removed it in 2013 and 14. Wait, what? The revised circuit with the Singapore sling chicane removed. It was changed for the 2013, so it's been out for 10 years now. No, then I'm thinking of a different part of the track then. Right. And I guess it was like a little bit because there was, I guess, concerns about safety because it was at higher speeds and all that. But it was the Singapore sling, I think, was great because like you ended up in the situation of Singapore was a very hard track to drive. And, that's, I think, why we saw this was the first year there was no safety car in Singapore. And
I think there was a time where Singapore was a really hard track to drive. It was a really hard track to get right, and that's why we always saw, a big incident in the last 5 to 10 laps of somebody, or 15 laps of somebody getting fatigued and just putting a foot wrong, or even last year with George going for the gap in Singapore, and we don't. Everything they've been doing to this track essentially has nuked what made it fun, different, and interesting, and made it so that we can have more overtakes. Because now they added a fourth DRS zone, and it's getting to a point of like, well, it's just going to be like a 4-corner like street circuit, like just so we can have some overtakes and some drama. Like, no, I like the fact that pole was 1 minute and 29.5 seconds, 1:29.5. Like, that is such a fast pole time for Singapore. Like, no, pole needs to be maybe 1:45, 1:48.
But those 10 seconds that basically got dropped are coming back. That they are not permanently lost, but they will be back. In fact, according to this article I have opened here, it is expected that the temporary layout change that is enacted last year and is continuing into this year reduces the lap time by 20 seconds. So when they add that back, we're going to get back, 15 of it or whatever.
I should hope so. But it's just, I thought they had taken that turnout permanently.
No. To quote from the Wikipedia, the circuit was expected to receive a reprofile from the 2022 Singapore Grand Prix. In August 2020, the Prime Minister announced plans to redevelop the Marina Bay floating platform into a community space. The floating platform has housed turns 16 through 19 since its inception in 2008 and is expected to make way for the construction of the NS National Service Square in 2022. It did not happen in 2022, but did happen in 2023, and is expected it will be temporary while this construction is undertaken.
We hope so, but it's just
No.
I want, because like the thing about Monaco, while Monaco is like a tight circuit, they're not going fast, because the reality is you can't go fast around. You can go fast around Singapore, and Monaco is also not the 300 kilometers required. It is the one short race on the calendar.
It has an exception in the rules just for it.
It does. And if I was going to redo Singapore, bring back the sling, bring back all of Sector 3, and remove DRS.
Like entirely?
No DRS zones around Singapore.
Ooh, interesting.
Because I don't care if it's a processional. Because if it is a processional, I want somebody pushing so hard into the back of another car that either the back car screws up or the front car screws up.
You just want the safety car back.
Do you realize we have not had a real safety car in like 9 or 10 races?
Yeah. And this is the first year we've never had a safety car
at Singapore. Like, it just made it for a boring race. And like, you don't need overtakes to be a good race, because the thing about a technically demanding circuit like Singapore, if these are truly the best drivers in the world, I want to see them drive a technically demanding circuit where, like, oh, you screw up a corner, guess what? Now that opens the door for somebody else to go through.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
It's not about overtakes. It's not even quite about jeopardy. It is the potential and possibility.
Right. Because there are tracks that are easy to overtake on, and they aren't technical. There are technical tracks that are actually somewhat easy to overtake on. See if I can remember one off the top of my head. Hungary, you can overtake on Hungary, but it's a pretty technical track. But, there are overtakes that happen. But then, like, there is a space for a technical track that is hard to overtake on, but punishes the drivers if they get it wrong.
Right.
And I think we've lost that about Singapore.
Yes, and your assertion is it's the Singapore sling. I think it's because I think they adding the fourth DRS zone didn't help. And I think also removing effectively the swimming pool section, but bigger in Singapore. I think that has not helped. I also think that street circuits, where you have to be technically capable and it's really pushing against the limits, are hampered by the new cars. Because I don't think they turn quickly, and I think they make it really hard to judge, and so you can't push it down to the millimeter, you're pushing it down to the centimeter.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And the cars are smaller in 2026. We'll see if that helps. But
they're not that much smaller, but I hope it's enough.
Yeah, but I think it's also a case if you look back to like the great days of the Singapore sling, and how many safety car incidents came out of people screwing up that chicane. Because they'd launch themselves into the barrier. You hit that bump and you go into the barrier.
Man, the bump that caught out Carlos, I thought they were going to have to do something about that because everybody was hitting that. Admittedly, Carlos was the only one that managed to bin it, but he got Max as well.
Yeah, Singapore used to be fun. Now it's getting lame.
I'm hoping 2026 fixes this for everybody.
Yeah, but I think there's just like a thing that I hope people understand. And I think this might be a little bit of like Drive to Survive problems of, we need every race to be a banger. And every race isn't going to be a banger. Every game in the NFL season is not a banger. Every playoff game isn't a banger. Hell, it took till the 90s really for a good Super Bowl.
But there's a difference. It's not a banger or not a banger. It's the fact that we have this other category of a bit of a snooze fest. And I don't think today's was a snooze fest. But we have had some races this year that feel like they've been a bit of a snooze fest.
Sure, but we had France in 2021.
And 2020 and 2019. And whenever we've had Magny-Cours on the track, it's not very exciting.
And the sad part about Magny-Cours is like, okay, let's find we have like 1,000 different combinations we can run. Why do we pick this one every time?
We can spray water on the track!
Run a new layout every year. Like, do something like this year we're going left here. Like, run a new layout every year. Keep them on their toes. Like, let's go for it. It's the same. It's the same thing I said about Bahrain. Of like, you have 4 Grade 1 F1 circuits there. Like, rotate them.
This the sub 60-second lap time from 2020. That was a good track. We should do more of that.
But also, like, I would seriously, you have 4 Grade 1 circuits there. Rotate them. Say, every 4 years we're gonna, it'll come back to you have 4 every 4 Grand Prix. There you go. Have some fun with it.
There is a challenge in F1, and I think Singapore exemplifies the challenge. I just don't know whether the challenge is the track, the drivers, the budget cap, spicy, or the cars themselves.
There is something that is currently wrong in this generation of Formula One, and I think you just touched on it, and we don't know what it is, because it's like, is it the cost cap? Is it the drivers? And maybe we'll figure it out and fix it, but something's off.
Next year, we've got some more rookies and some spicy rookies who do have something to prove, so maybe we're going to get something.
Maybe.
Predictions for Austin?
It's in 4 weeks.
4 boring weeks.
Fine, I'm going to make a really bold one then.
Okay, while you get ready for that, my predictions for Austin is that Leclerc wins but gets DQ'd for a flexi wing infringement, specifically the front wing, because that's when Ferrari said they're bringing their flexi wing, which will give the win to Lewis, who will be about 3 seconds behind him.
Are we trying to improve our batting average?
No, not really. I'm just trying to come up with a spice take.
Fantastic. I'm going to say Max takes the win. I think these 4 weeks are going to be great for Red Bull to re-engineer their car and hopefully bring it back to somewhat on the grid. I will also say we'll have a spicy turn 1 incident that will lead to a real safety car.
Oh, and that corner can cause that. That's definitely possible.
And I will also say it's going to rain.
Have we ever had a wet race in Austin?
I think so. It was like 2013. It was like one of the first ones.
I'm going to go check. I just watched it in 2012. It's a pretty good track.
It's not bad. Coda's not a bad track. I'm now going to look for a super long range forecast and see if there's any chance of rain. Way down on like October 20th. Well, it's currently predicted to be sunny with a 20% chance of rain, so we'll see.
Ooh, that's something. Austin F1 attendance declines again as rain comes to race day in the Austin Business Journal. From 2015 is the article. For the 3rd straight year, it's behind a paywall. Looking at the race report, it doesn't say anything about rain. Wet. Nope. But it did say it rained, so maybe it's a different year.
2015, the infamous Austin Grand Prix.
What happened in 2015?
Lewis tossed the hat at Nico.
Oh, it was rain. Rain in 2015.
Should we predict that Lando tosses a hat to Oscar?
No. Lewis tosses a hat to Charles.
No, that seems more like they're going to be friends. I think Lewis should throw it at George.
Okay.
Lewis probably knows better than to throw a hat these days.
True. He knew that too much would be read into it.
Yeah.
Hamilton won in 2015. So.
Yeah, I know. And then he threw the hat at Nico. because that was when he clinched it, like his next title. Nico is pissed. He threw it at Nico. And then between the back half of the 2015 season and the start of the 2016 season, Nico went on like a 7-race winning tear.
Screw Nico. He should have let Lewis win.
Good job, Brittany.
Shall we wrap up?
Yeah, I referred to Nico Rosberg as Brittany. So thank you once again for listening to Tinfoil Helmets. As always, we're awaiting your feedback. Please write to us at feedback@tinfoilhelmets.com and let us know your conspiracy theories, feedbacks, and your wants for this podcast. And as always, please remember to tell your friends and, well, yourself too, to listen, like, rate, and subscribe. We'll be back in an ungodly amount of time that might be longer than the actual off-season for the Austin Grand Prix. No, it's the United States Grand Prix from the Circuit of the Americas.